People standing by their barbecues.
Dino Calvert is at the track with his friends for a weekend of racing.
One of the gentlemen in the pits suddenly jumped in his car and he took off. And I thought, well, you don't drive like that in the pits usually. And I looked up and all I could see was smoke rising.
Pearson does all he can to stop the plane in time.
Holy crow!
The plane plows into a guardrail installed down the middle of the runway.
Smoke, Bob.
"17 minutes after running out of fuel, Air Canada Flight 143 comes to a final stop on the ground.
Yeah? You okay?
Somebody yelled, "Yahoo!" or something, and then people started applauding. And we were so grateful. We made it. When you believe that you're going to crash, you do believe that the airplane is going to break apart, you're going to have fire.
Evacuate! Evacuate!
Evacuate!
All right, let's go. We got to get up.
Thick smoke is quickly filling the cabin. The crew doesn't take any chances. They want everyone off the plane as quickly as possible.
There was a sense of joy, and then a panic kind of, it seemed to go in waves, and then a panic saying, we got to get out of here, we got to get out of here.
Less than 2 months earlier, an Air Canada DC-9 made a successful emergency landing in Cincinnati, only to burst into flames on the tarmac before all the passengers could get off. 23 people died. The crew and passengers of this flight want to avoid a similar fate.
It took maybe just a few seconds to come up to a full halt on the runway, but the cockpit was full of smoke.
Passenger evacuation checklist.
Passenger checklist.
Fuel shut off. Off. Cabin depressurized.
Electrics off.
Electrics off. Checklist complete. Time to get out of here.
Come on, guys, get some fire extinguishers.
We grabbed the fire extinguishers on our way, and you never go to a fire at a racetrack without having a fire extinguisher with you. And we ran up towards it. The doors open up, and you see the chutes come out, sort of like a spider growing legs.
The plane ended up eventually standing almost what appeared to me to be almost on its nose.
When I opened my door and I saw that the chute was so steep, I thought, oh my goodness, how would I get these passengers to go down?
Due to the nose-down angle of the plane, the two rear slides don't reach the ground. 10 people are slightly injured during the evacuation, most of them coming down the steep rear slides.
I heard on the West radar frequency, he said, one of the 767 says, he's down okay, he's in one piece, and that's when our cheer went up. I said, okay, because all of these people were going to sleep in their own bed that night.
There's still a lot of smoke coming from the plane's nose.
Turned out it was about 6 inches of insulation between the inner and outer skins. From friction, that was starting to burn.
The flight attendants have good news. All 61 passengers have made it off the plane. There's not so much as a single serious injury.
Come on, give me a hand.
Yeah, extinguisher.
Bob Pearson has done what no one has done before. He's safely landed a 767 with no engines, gliding to safety for more than 26,000 feet.
Air Canada Flight 143 glided...
The event makes international headlines immediately. People are already asking how one of the most sophisticated passenger planes in the world could have run out of fuel.
Sliding down emergency chutes.
By the next day, the investigation has already begun. Bill Taylor and Diane Rochelot of Canada's Aviation Safety Bureau are among the first investigators at the scene.
I was a junior mechanical engineering at the time. I had been working for Transport Canada for a year. Going to the field for the first time was very exciting. It was new. It was a major aircraft.
Once we got into the fuel quantity indicating system, I actually left Diane to deal with the specifics of the computer system.
First, Bill Taylor needs to confirm what everyone has been telling him, that the plane is out of fuel. Investigators drained the tanks, collecting less than 17 gallons of fuel. The 767 can hold almost 24,000 gallons. It's like having 5 tablespoons of fuel in a mid-sized car. Taylor next needs to examine the possibility that the fuel leaked out during the flight.
The other checks involved looking for any evidence of fuel having been lost. They even went so far as to go into what they call the dry bay of the aircraft. I'm a bit claustrophobic, so I really wasn't too enthused about going up in there, but I crawled up and had a look around with the flashlight and confirmed that there was no evidence of fuel having been lost in there.
That leaves Taylor with only one conclusion. Flight 143 took off without enough fuel. Now investigators need to find out why.
It's in one piece.
Diane Rochelot begins looking for the answer to that question in the plane's sophisticated electronics bay, located beneath the cabin.
The 767 was a newer type aircraft, and it did have a lot of computerized system, and I guess back in 1982 these were coming onto the market at a fast rate, and they were newer types of electronic system.
Rochelot confirms that a computerized unit, the digital fuel gauge processor, had been malfunctioning on this plane. There was no spare in Montreal, so it couldn't be replaced. Rochelot takes the component for testing.
It was decided early on that the unit, the fuel processing unit, would be taken to the manufacturer, Honeywell, in Indianapolis for testing. And I was tasked with taking the unit. So we went through all the testing procedure, and then at one point we did discover that there was a malfunction with the unit. During the testing, we went more and more in depth, and we found out that one of the circuit, it's called an inductor coil. It was a very, very small part, and it was encapsulated at manufacture, and encapsulated means it's covered with plastic. You cannot visually see it because it's now covered with plastic, and you can't see the inductor coil itself. But once we took over the plastic case, we could see that the solder joint had not been made properly, which caused a malfunction in the system.
The faulty processor explains why Pearson didn't have fuel gauges for the flight, but doesn't explain why he didn't have enough fuel. The inoperative gauges were clearly flagged. Ground crews wouldn't have relied on them when they were fueling the plane. Investigators confirmed that the ground crew did perform a manual check of the fuel before takeoff.
We just need to know what you did next. Yeah? We did a manual check of both tanks, and then we pump enough fuel for the trip to Edmonton.
Flight 143 should have taken off with enough fuel for the trip.
Okay, thanks. That helps.
Investigators now have to figure out how one of the world's most advanced jetliners took off with half the fuel necessary for its flight. The investigators know that with its fuel gauges out of service, Flight 143's fuel tanks were checked manually. Then the fuel for the trip to Edmonton was added to the tanks. But before the plane could be given more fuel, a crucial calculation had to be carried out. Pilots need to know the weight of the fuel on their plane. But fuel trucks pump jet fuel by volume. In order for pilots and fuelers to communicate, a simple routine translation between volume and weight has to be made.
Thank you.
Investigators